Hi everybody and welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for joining me. In today's video, what I thought we would look at are 5 of my favourite deadly mushrooms. We're going to cover what they look like, what are they commonly mistaken for, and what are they going to do to you should you be unfortunate enough to pick one of these instead of an edible variety. So join me for this video where we look at the 5 deadly mushrooms. The first thing I want to do is to just go through a little anatomy class of the mushroom, just so when I'm talking about certain descriptive parts of a mushroom later, you know what I mean. So all mushrooms have a cap. So the cap can look very different or depending on the species of mushroom, but here right now, I just want to describe a very basic mushroom to you. So it has this sort of almost sort of umbrella-like cap on the top. That is called the cap. Underneath that is where you'll find gills or pores or teeth, and those are what distribute the spores of the mushroom out to make other baby mushrooms. The stem of the mushroom is called the stipe. In some mushrooms, there'll be a skirt, sort of a pleated skirt-like part of the mushroom, and that is called the annulus. Down from the annulus, some mushrooms emerge from what is called a vulva. Now, this is a protective sort of bag that the mushroom is inside of, and then it erupts from there. So those are the parts of the mushroom that you need to know for later. So let's get into my first deadly mushroom. So my first deadly mushroom is Amanita phalloides, or the death cap. So it obviously sounds like this is going to be a fatal attraction should you come across this mushroom, so let's get into it. This particular mushroom is about 15 centimetres tall, or about 5.9 inches, so roughly the size of a small ruler. It has a white cap with white gills on the underside. It forms a white stipe, and it emerges from a very papery thin white vulva. That papery, sort of thin, very delicate, fragile vulva is one of its identifying features. Another is midway up the stipe we find a pleat-like annulus. That is what we're looking out for when we're looking for Amanita phalloides. What can it commonly be mistaken for? It's commonly mistaken for Volvariella vulvaceae, try saying that one quick 3 times, or the paddy straw mushroom. In its early stage, the paddy straw can look very similar to the Amanita. It is white and it has a very similar shape. However, the paddy straw emerges from a brown-like vulva rather than the white papery thin of the Amanita. As the mushroom matures, and this is one thing you'll find with mushrooms, their baby stage is very different to their more mature stage. The paddy straw will go into a more conical type shape, and the very tip of it will be a darker brown, whereas the Amanita has an overall creamy light brown colour. This will have a darker brown tip. So that is one way that you can tell these apart. Global coverage, where can you find it? The Amanita phalloides forms a relationship with oak trees. So originally it was found inside of Europe. However, with the distribution of plants globally, some infected oak trees have been delivered to America, the Americas, South America, South Africa, Asia, and Australia. And now Amanita phalloides can be found in all of these locations. It has quite a broad distribution globally. With increased urbanisation, these mushrooms are being found more frequently in places like back gardens and maybe fields and things that people are going to be going into. So previously it would have only been found inside of woodlands. However, as humans encroach on more wooded environments, these mushrooms are still in the ground in their fungal stage, and so people are starting to come into contact with them. Now, if you did happen to come into contact with this mushroom and have your fatal attraction, how does it work? It uses alpha amatins. What that does is it goes inside of your body and it starts to attack your RNA. Your RNA is very, very busy producing proteins for your body to keep you alive. So once you've consumed Amanita phalloides, the alpha amatins go inside your body and start to break down the body's ability to be able to produce proteins. This then causes mast cell death. So as this toxin is working its way through your body, what is happening is you are slowly and very painfully no longer able to create new cells inside your body. And those messages that would normally get around your body to deliver proteins where they need to go, to take nutrients around, all these types of things all of your body processes all start to come to an end because the toxin is getting in there and it's inside your RNA. If you think that maybe eating or frying up the Amanita first or freezing it first is going to help, it will not. Amanita phalloides is immune to cooking and freezing or anything like that, so you cannot process this mushroom in any way to later be able to consume it. It's not one that you should go anywhere near. There are some newly emerging treatments for Amanita phalloides poisoning, but they're currently sort of in their testing phase, and there isn't really currently anything that we can do once you've consumed something and it has started to toxify inside your body. So how deadly is it? Consuming one cap from one Amanita phalloides is enough to kill an adult. So if you think you can mess around and find out, Amanita phalloides will have another opinion for you. Mushroom number 2 is Conicybe filaria, or fool's cone cap. So what does that look like? Unfortunately for you, if you are foraging around and not really too sure what you're doing, this mushroom looks like many other mushrooms. It has the typical conical shape with a reddy brown coloration, which you'll find in a lot of books and in a lot of mushrooms. The stipe has a graduated colour, going from a reddy brown colour down to a white colour, and tapers slightly at the end. The gills on the underside of the cap are a creamy white colour, and these also age, so they go to a browny sort of colour as the mushroom ages. It also has the annulus that we saw in the other mushroom previously. The stipe starts to look a little bit furry almost as it begins to age, where it has this textured-like appearance. It grows to about 20 to 35 centimetres, which is about 8 to 13.5 inches tall. What is it commonly mistaken for? So this particular mushroom, the fool's cone cap, is often mistaken for the psilocybin mushroom that people are looking for their hallucinogenic effects, and we'll get into those when we do our medicinal mushrooms next time. With its conical shape, the reddish brown coloration and the locations where you can find it, people can often mistake this particular mushroom for psilocybin. Although I imagine there are a great many other mushrooms that are also going to be very, very similar. So anything that is reddish brown and conical could easily be mistaken for the fool's cone cap. So where can you find this deadly mushroom? So it does have quite a large global distribution. It can be found in England, it can be found in Europe, America, South America, Asia, Australia. It usually grows in rich soils, in sawdust, wood chips, leaf litter, that sort of high compostable material that's sort of starting to be broke down. So it can be found in woodlands where there's a lot of this leaf litter and things, but also as people are now starting to have more compost piles and things in their gardens, they're increasingly coming in urban environments. So you might very well find it in your garden. So how does it work? What is it going to do to you if you eat it? So this particular mushroom releases very similar toxins to our previous mushroom. So it releases alpha amatins. So we already know that's going to affect our RNA and cause cell death. What this one also does is it targets your liver. So it wants to break down your liver as quickly as possible, causing total liver failure. But how deadly is this mushroom? This mushroom wants to give you a very bad day. So it has a 6-hour silent phase. So one thing I've noticed when researching toxic mushrooms is that they tend to have this latent phase. So this one has a 6-hour latent phase where 6 hours after consuming, you're absolutely fine, going about your day. You haven't had that high that you were expecting from what you thought was psilocybin, but all of a sudden your stomach starts to feel painful. You start to feel a bit nauseated. Then you don't know which end to put on the toilet. Following that, once you get 12 hours after you've consumed it, the toxins inside this mushroom are now destroying your liver. 24 hours later, you experience total liver failure. If you do not get seen to or looked at, or doctors don't know what to do about your liver, then this one is also fatal. The third mushroom that we're going to be looking at is Cortinarius rubellus, or the deadly webcap. So the deadly webcap is an orangey brown colour that has a very conical shape when it's young, and that changes over time into more of an umbonate type shape. and the edges can even curl up and sort of ruffle as it sort of matures into its more adult sort of phase. When young, the deadly webcap has a thin cortina, like a thin veil over the gills, which comes down as it ages, and that's where it gets the name from. Some of those sort of fine threads can sort of remain behind on the gills. The stipe is very thick. It's almost as thick as the mushroom is tall, and it has a very textured type appearance, so it can be quite identifiable given how thick and chunky this particular mushroom looks. What is it commonly mistaken for? The deadly webcap is commonly mistaken for a type of edible mushroom. Many people say it looks like Cantharellus cereus. This is a type of edible chanterelle. Now, from looking at the images, I think it can be difficult to see how you could mistake these two mushrooms. A chanterelle has a very distinctive type shape. I think as the mushroom matures and the gills start to lift slightly into this more umbonate shape, you could maybe mistake a chanterelle for a deadly webcap. It can be difficult when you're in the field to be able to be absolutely certain of your identification. And so one thing that I would say, if you're not absolutely certain of identification, don't eat it. Mushrooms are great to go and look at and study, but don't be out there licking things that you don't know what it is. So where can you find this chanterelle looking little beastie? So it doesn't have as wide a distribution as some of the other mushrooms in this list. It can be found in the UK, in Europe and in America, but its distribution is very patchy and not everybody is spotting it. One of the reasons that we often find this lack of information is often down to misidentification of mushrooms or non-identification of mushrooms. People need to go and identify these things and then actually record it for us to know exactly where to find it. So if you eat this little mushroom, what exactly is it going to do to you? This is a sneaky little mushroom that produces nephrotoxins. Now, this is not going to affect you until up to 3 weeks after you've eaten the mushroom. By that point, you've long forgotten, I imagine, that you even ate the mushroom, which is where the problem comes. It has such a long latent phase where it gets inside your body and starts to give you a bad day that you've long forgotten you've eaten it. So when you present to the hospital with excruciating pains, you don't know what it's for. You might be thinking, what did I eat yesterday? What did I eat last week? Are you thinking about that dodgy little mushroom that you ate that you picked out of the garden? No, you're not, and that's where it's so sneaky. This particular mushroom starts to attack your kidneys, break down your kidney function, leading to kidney failure. As this particular mushroom leads to kidney failure, your only option is to either have a transplant or to remain on dialysis. So this one really wants to give you a bad time. But how deadly is it? Eating just 1 to 3 of the caps of this particular mushroom is enough to cause you kidney failure. If your kidneys fail and you cannot have dialysis or do not get a transplant, then this mushroom can lead to your demise. There is ongoing research into this mushroom. The issue that we have is because it has such a long latent phase, people often do not connect their kidney failure with a mushroom they randomly ate 3 weeks ago. On to my deadly mushroom number 4. Now we're going to hop in for another Amanita because it just seems to be that Amanita just wants to mess your day up entirely. And so this is Amanita rugosa, or destroying angel. When we think of angels, we think of sweet little cherubim-like creatures, don't we? But actually, if you saw biblically accurate angels, you might understand where this particular mushroom gets its name from. So what does it look like? This Amanita can easily be mistaken for the Amanita phalloides that we covered first. However, this one is pure white. It doesn't discolour with age. The shape of the cap slightly changes, and so it goes from a more conical shape to a sort of a flatter shape, and it will open out, which is a little bit more like the more commonly seen red and white capped mushroom that you might see, which is also an Amanita. So the destroying angel gets this flat white cap as it ages. It has a white cap, white gills, a white stipe with a white pleated annulus, and it again emerges from this white thin vulva. So very similar to our first Amanita, but this one does not discolour with age. What can it commonly be mistaken for? So this mushroom, unfortunately, due to the way that it changes over age, is commonly mistaken for a couple of edible varieties. It can be mistaken for Agaricus campestis and Agaricus silvicola. The first one is the field mushroom, and the second is the wood mushroom. Both of those are edible varieties, but as you can see from the images, they look very similar to the destroying angel. However, they certainly would taste nicer and would be kinder to your insides than the destroying angel would be. What is its global distribution? Where can you find it? So this particular mushroom is found in mountainous regions in England and Ireland, or lowland regions of Scotland. It is also found in forested areas of Scandinavia. It can also be found in certain areas within Europe. The destroying angel that we're covering now is not the same as the destroying angel that you get in America, and this lends itself to the conversation around why we use scientific names in the first place. Common names can easily be used for multiple different species, or different regions have very different names for the same species, so it can be really hard to keep track of exactly what it is you're talking about, which is why scientific names are used. So the destroying angel mushroom that you find in America is not the same as Amanita verbose that we're discussing now, the destroying angel of Europe and the United Kingdom. So how does it work? If you were to mistake the Amanita verbose for one of the field mushrooms or wood mushrooms, how is it going to work and what is it going to do to you? So this particular variety of mushroom, the verbose, has a whole cocktail of toxins that it releases into your body. It has the alpha amatins, but it also produces beta amatins and virotoxins and nephrotoxins and thalotoxins. All of these work inside your body to slowly break down everything. So this works on your liver, your kidneys, and your central nervous system most predominantly. It wants to take out the areas that are going to be removing toxins from your body. It doesn't want you to do that. It doesn't want to remove itself from your body. It wants to stay in there where it's nice and happy, and it can destroy your whole day. So it breaks down these organs of your body. Now, it doesn't really do it in a very nice way. Let's get into it. The toxins affect people over time. It usually starts 8 to 12 hours after ingestion and consists of stomach pains, sickness, diarrhea, irritability, vertigo, and hepatitis. As time progresses, so do the symptoms. But you start to enter what is known as a pseudo recovery or a false recovery. Between 12 and 24 hours after you consume this mushroom, you start to feel better. So you go through this phase where you start to feel quite sick, you may be throwing up, you really don't feel very well. You feel a bit lightheaded, so you go for a little lie down. And then you start to feel good. 12, 24 hours after, you're like, okay, we got over it. That was a really weird stomach bug. But that's where it's doing the most harm. In that phase where you are lying down and you're relaxing and you're starting to feel a little bit better about things, that is when it is destroying your liver, your kidneys, and your nervous system. After about 48 hours, it all depends on your physiology, but between 48 and 72 hours, that is when you start to experience massive organ failure. Your liver and kidneys start to fail, and you meet your maker. But how many of these do you have to eat before you get to visit the pearly stairs? It only takes one destroying angel mushroom for you to be heading up those pearly stairs, the gates opening, or I don't know, maybe you take the elevator down. I'll probably meet you there, let's be honest. But it only takes one cap before you're heading down there. It has been said that if you eat just a very small amount, if you take a little bitey bite and then you drink a whole lot of charcoal, you might start to recover. I'm not going to take my chances. It's not called destroying angel for no reason. And now my final mushroom, and we have another angel. I don't know what it is with people that are naming things and giving it the name angel when it really does want to see you see angels. But our final one is Pluricybella porogens. This is known as angel's wings. Now this particular mushroom is incredibly naughty in terms of what it looks like. So this is a white mushroom that has very little stipe, and it will usually grow out of the side of wood. So what you will see is a sort of concaved cap, which as it slowly starts to grow, you will notice it will curl upwards, it will have a little ring around the top, and you'll see those lovely gills that stretch all the way down the underside of the mushroom, attaching to a very tiny stipe which comes out of the base of some wood. They usually grow in a little cluster along the wood. So what can it commonly be mistaken for? Well, those of you who maybe eat mushrooms might look at this and think, oh, I'm sure I've seen that in the supermarket. I promise you have not seen angel wings in the supermarket. However, this looks exactly like the oyster mushroom, which is very easy to misidentify as this particular deadly mushroom. The oyster has the same white shape. It has the same very small stipe that comes out of wood. It has the gills that run down the underside and this smooth cap that's sort of concaved up as it grows and develops. And again, with the same with the angel's wings, the oyster mushroom grows in like little clusters along the edge of some wood. The only way that you can tell these two apart is that angel's wings grows on conifer type wood and oyster mushrooms grows on softwood. So if you do not know how to identify your trees, or a log is lying on the ground and you do not know how to identify what tree it came from, do not pick these little mushrooms to see if you can eat them. Where can you find angel wings? What's its distribution? It's found in the UK and in Europe. It's found in cooler areas of Asia, and it has been reported in some places in America and Australia. Again, this comes back to a point we made earlier on. Because this looks so similar to oyster mushrooms, it could very well be that people are seeing these and identifying them as oyster mushrooms and either consuming them and then not being able to tell us about it, or not eating them, just identifying them and recording them as oyster when maybe they're not. So their distribution is not fully known. But we do know it's in cooler places, so definitely here in the UK. The same with the last mushroom that we looked at. This one has a latent phase. However, the latent phase for this mushroom is 13 to 18 days. So there is no way you're likely to remember that you ate destroying deadly angel rather than the oyster mushroom. So between 13 and 18 days after you have eaten this mushroom, symptoms will start to appear, and they begin with tremors, loss of sensation in the extremities, loss of your mental faculties, and intractable seizures. These are seizures that cannot be treated with any sort of medications. So you might present to the emergency room or to the hospital experiencing these sort of tremors, these seizures, all this type of stuff, and nothing has responded to any of our normal treatments. Again, because you ate these mushrooms 13 to 18 days previously, you're very unlikely to remember that you even ate them. So when the doctor is asking you, what have you done? What have you eaten? What have you experienced? What toxins have you maybe gotten into your body? You're not going to remember the oyster mushrooms that you ate over 2 weeks ago. Let's be honest with us, most of us can't remember what we had for dinner yesterday. There's no way you can remember something that you randomly ate 2 weeks ago. This sneaky little mushroom wants to get inside your head. And so the way that it does that is 3 days after you start to experience symptoms, they start to ramp up a little bit. That's showing that the breakdown of your actual brain. So you start to get lesions form 3 days after your tremors start, and maybe you start to lose some mental faculties. You might start to experience visions and that sort of thing. So you might start to experience some really odd symptoms, usually 3 days after the onset of the initial symptoms. And that is those lesions forming. And normally by that point, it's already too late. If you get to the point where you start to have seizures and no medical intervention has been able to help you, it's usually your body is then completely taken over with the toxins, and it is a one-way street thereafter. So how deadly is it? How many of these cute little mushrooms do you need to eat before you're going to be taking the elevator up or down? These were once eaten as a delicacy in Japan. I have no idea how they managed to do that. These mushrooms have more toxin inside their tiny little bodies than anything else. They are ridiculously toxic. So I don't know how they were eaten safely as a delicacy for a while. But one thing that happened was all of a sudden, I don't know if this mushroom just woke up and it thought, you know what, I'm not having this. I'm going to take out a few people. And it produced this pandemic of people just dying from this strange brain rotting type toxin that nobody could associate with. It took time before they realised it was the angel wings. It was these mushrooms that were destroying people. Because the toxins inside these mushrooms are found in such high numbers, That's the issue. So even if you eat a very small amount, even if you were to eat one or two of these mushrooms, that is enough to prove fatal, given the high toxicity of these mushrooms. However, if you find them and you think it's an oyster mushroom, who's going to eat one oyster mushroom? You're very likely to maybe take away the whole bunch and consume them all in one meal. And that, my dear, will prove to be your absolute downfall. So that is another mushroom that means for you to have a very bad day and will send the Grim Reaper a calling, waiting for you to have your nice mushroom toast before it can take you away 2 weeks later. So they are 5 of the top deadly mushrooms. What did you think of those? Do you think that you'd be able to identify them if you were out foraging in the woods or out in the fields? I am not too sure I would. And I study mushrooms. I don't think I'd take the risk. So, what do you think? What did you think of the video? I really hope you like it. I don't want to promote mycophobia here. We have enough of that in the UK, people who are scared of mushrooms. So I'm going to be doing some videos on health benefits of mushrooms and some great medicinal mushrooms too. But let's get into a bit of a deadly series. Anybody who knows me knows I'm a little bit goth and I'm a little bit dark. So I wanted to cover some dark sort of stuff. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Did any of these mushrooms shock you? Did you realise that you could eat a very small amount of a mushroom and it literally brings the Grim Reaper a calling? Let me know, I'm really interested. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next video. See you soon. Bye.